Hello, my name is Dr. Rebecca Reynolds. I am a professor of education, special education, psychology, and child brain development. I find assessment of young children to be very fascinating. There is a psychology to writing observations without bias, impartial, and to the best understanding of the children we hope to assess. If you are watching this presentation, to obtain a certificate of completion, be sure to save in Word document the answers to all of your work from this presentation. Then, email that work to dr.rebecca.j.reynolds, the number 1, @gmail.com. Write in the subject line of your email, Training Hours. Then directions will be sent to you about how you can pay $10 tuition and receive your certificate of completion. Observation can be a very useful tool in assessment. However, observing for educational and developmental assessment is much more than just watching, especially if we have the goal of helping children to learn through observation. In this presentation, we will introduce documentation of observations, then assessment types and reasons to observe, including screening for potential learning difficulties, documenting for parent-teacher conferences, and documentation for the next teacher. Documentation of observations must be impartial and non-biased. This can be a difficult goal to obtain. However, there are steps that can be taken to prevent bias from impacting our observations and assessments of young children. First, we must have an understanding of why we need to observe for the assessment of young children. Then we must understand how we can non-biasedly document our observations to accomplish a complete assessment. New reasons to observe can present themselves. However, for the sake of this training, we will cover documentation of observations, assessment types and reasons to observe, including 3 things. 1. Screening for potential learning difficulties. 2. Documenting for parent-teacher conferences. And 3. Documentation for the next teacher. As you record your observation, you need to spend extra time and energy making sure that you do not include your opinions, professional and personal, into the actual observation. By keeping your opinions separate, you will be able to focus on what the child needs, and you will keep bias out of your observations. Bias can creep into an observation and stay with the child throughout their education, being spread from teacher to teacher. We need to be very careful of how we present our observations and assessments to other professionals and the families of our children. In the first observation here of Christy, you can see that what is documented as the actual observation does not include any opinion statements. The observer's opinions are written separately. Then again, in the observation of Joseph, you can see the same strategy. No opinions are written in the actual observation. Then the opinions are written separately. Documenting an observation needs to include 4 components. 1. What did you actually see and hear while you observed? Write this with no opinions. 2. Write your opinions separate from your observations. 3. In the assessment, write any conclusions you have based on your observations. For example, what did each child learn? What do the children need help with? Etc. 4. Plan how you will assist this child's growth and development based on your observations assessment. Now, take a look at these boys. Then write your own observation documentation of Adrian, who is playing with the beads. Expect your observation details to be different than someone else's. Everyone interprets information differently. Just be prepared to explain your interpretation. If you are watching this presentation to obtain a certificate of completion, be sure to save and Word document the answers to all of your work from this presentation. Then email that work to dr.rebecca.j.reynolds1@gmail.com. Write in the subject line of your email, training hours. Then directions will be sent to you about how you can pay $10 tuition and receive your certificate of completion. Now that you've written down your observation, compare your observation to the observation example written here. While you compare your documentation with the documentation here, look for this specifically. 1. Do you have any opinion words in your observation? These can include words like I think, he felt, he knew, he wanted, etc. 2. Remember that if you cannot see it or hear it, it is not an observation. For example, you cannot see or hear a child's feelings. Instead, you can see his behavior, and you can hear what he says. For example, Adrian wanted to take the beads off the toy. Is not an observation. Instead, say, Adrian pulled the beads hard, pulling them towards himself while frowning and yelling. 3. Then, after your observation is complete, write a paragraph about what Adrian learned or what you learned from observing. This is where you can write, Adrian pulled the beads hard, pulling them towards himself while frowning and yelling. Or you can add, Adrian has trouble with controlling his frustration. 4. Now write your plan on how you will assist Adrian in the challenges you discovered with your observation. Matching observation types and the reason for observation will help educators explain their reasons and be more organized. Also, keeping observations and assessments together in a file or a binder in chronological order will assist in identifying growth patterns or a lack of growth patterns. As time goes by, we have learned many different ways to test children's growth, development, scholastic abilities, and intelligence levels. Until recent years, we have not put to use the ideas of observation with the goal in mind of using observation for developmental and scholastic assessment to inspire growth and development. Checklists are an easy and fast method that can help the teacher stay organized and work with individual child or children in developing in a specific area. When checklists, anecdotal notes, and other assessment formats are used, they can be placed into a portfolio for each individual child in chronological order. This portfolio can serve as a window into each child's development. With information placed in chronological order, identifying any special needs or growth progression will be easy. Having a basic understanding of child development will help each teacher screen children and watch out for potential learning or behavioral challenges. For example, take reading skills. It is greatly assumed that reading skills should not be assessed during the infant and toddler times of development. However, this is not true. For example, infants at a young age learn to track items and faces with their eyes. This behavior is a needed skill for reading. By observing this behavior and documenting it with the date observed, teachers can begin to watch on a chronological timeline the growth and development progress for each child in their care. This screening can be as simple as marking down when this skill has been observed and mastered. By documenting a chronological pattern, we can watch each child's development and locate challenges they may encounter. This chart gives an example of how to use a dated checklist. The dates are documented when mastery of skill is observed. Using anecdotal notes to identify and plan for assisting with learning and behavioral difficulties can be effective. Looking at this example dated May 29, 2018, you will find the observation written as an anecdotal note. Then, using Dr. Rebecca's formula, you can separate your opinions from an assessment and create a plan of action to assist this student. Be prepared to make regular anecdotal notes, such as this one, throughout the school year. This can be a time-consuming adventure if this is used for all of your children. However, if used for specific children with needs, as described here for Joshua, time can be saved, and documentation will help you plan for meeting each child's needs. Screening can happen as a regular part of the school day. By keeping a checklist near you or in an easy place to reach, you can easily write down the date you observed a new skill developing. Your checklist should be developmentally appropriate for the age and developmental level of the children in your classroom and be goal-oriented. Observations while you are interacting with children can be the easiest way to observe. You have direct access to their speech patterns, social abilities, and cognitive processing skills. Documenting with anecdotal notes can be the most effective type of assessment for this type of observation. Work examples are another great chance to document a child's abilities. For example, by hanging onto an art project that used scissors to cut out a circle that ended up being a rectangle can confirm a teacher's thoughts that this child may need help with developing small motor skills. Or by holding on to a worksheet where the child were to match shapes, but a child struggled matching these shapes, can show that this child needs to work on how to match and sort common shapes, a needed math skill. Of course, teachers can share information about the screening process and screening for potential learning difficulties. However, when communicating with parents, we must make sure we accomplish the following 6 things. 1. We do not assume that parents have an understanding of educational jargon. 2. We do not assume that parents have no knowledge of the educational system. 3. We demonstrate respect for each family's cultural and individual needs. 4. We give them physical, tangible information to hold on to. 5. We are there and available throughout the year to assist them in everything we are able to assist them in. 6. Every child's progress needs to be reported to parents and families, no matter the needs of the children. Documenting for parent communication can be taken directly from anecdotal notes, checklists, or other assessment tools used to assess children. However, the goals for documentation of conferences is different than the goals of documentation for classroom use. By watching and documenting small amounts of exactly what you see the children do and experience, you are writing anecdotal observations. This can be very helpful when creating documentation to show children's growth for a parent-teacher conference. Using checklists as a communication tool can help parents identify what their own child needs to work on. Then, in choosing an assessment tool for yourself, be sure to locate assessments that look for specific things that match your goals. There are assessments that rate reading levels, math abilities, social emotional levels, muscle development, etc. By understanding and communicating the individualization of what assessments are used for, each teacher will be able to communicate very specific growth patterns, giving information that can be communicated to parents in conferences, emails, text messages, and phone apps. By individualizing what you address the parents' concerns effectively and answer more questions as they arise. Another assessment that can be used and is an assessment parents fill in. By having parents fill in an assessment questionnaire and turn it in before the conference, you can gain an idea of what questions or needs the parents may have. You will also gain perspective about the parent's attitude and understanding of their child's current development. And you can have parents screen each child as part of the enrollment process, giving you more information before the child starts in your classroom. Give the parents the same form at registration and before every conference. By doing this, you can assess the parents' growth in understanding their children's education. We can go on about many different reasons to assess young children. One of those reasons, and the last reason described in this presentation, includes documentation for the children's next teacher. When documenting information for the next teacher, the current teacher needs to be very clear, concise, honest, non-biased, and professional in the written documentations and explanations of teacher findings. The organization of teacher notes need to be easy to follow and easy to read. It helps in the communication if said findings of every teacher of the same school uses the same format. This way, the organizational patterns of documentation are familiar to every teacher, preventing possible miscommunication and encouraging teamwork in educating young children. This is an example of a possible format that can be used for documenting observations that include teacher opinions, assessment of the observation, and a plan of action based on what was observed. A format that includes a much clearer detail as possible can leave less room for questions and bias in each observation and assessment. Then, when all of the assessments, including checklists, work examples, observations, and other formats are organized in chronological order, a portfolio will be assembled, creating a timeline of growth and development that communicates effectively to the next teacher, giving that needed information for each individual child. If you are watching this presentation, to obtain a certificate of completion, be sure to save in Word document the answers to all of your work from this presentation. Then email that work to dr.rebecca.j.reynolds1@gmail.com. Write in the subject line of your email, training hours. Then directions will be sent to you about how you can pay a $10 tuition and receive your certificate of completion. This concludes our training assessment through observation. Thank you.